Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are back and we are going to be covering my legendary run in today's Title Tuesday, November 18th of the great year 2025. Now, Title Tuesday has become the premier online event. All of the top players in the world, including Magnus, myself, Fabiano, Arjun, etc., do compete in this weekly tournament. Everybody shows up. There's always a big audience watching it live. And as such, let's cover a couple of games that I played today. Now, today I start off a little bit shaky. I was able to beat some of the lower rated players to get to a score of 4 out of 4. Ultimately, I started playing some GMs, and we're going to pick it up in a very crucial 7th round match. Now, going into the 7th round match, I was on a perfect score of 6 points out of 6 points, and I was playing against the former 5-time world chess champion, Magnus Carlsen from Norway, who was trailing me by half a point with 5.5. So, I have the black piece in round 7, a very big matchup, and the game starts with the move e4. I play the move e5, we get knight to f3, and now I play the move knight c6. Magnus goes bishop c4 as saying the classic Gucci piano instead of going to b5 like in the Ruy Lopez. So I go knight to f6. We get the move d3, bishop to c5, and now Magnus plays this epic move king to f1. Now it's evidently clear that with so much on the line, this was a mouse slip for Magnus. This was not something where he rolled a dice or he's trying to be funny. He just made a mouse slip. Now, obviously, it's not that big of a deal, fortunately, for Magnus, because even though he's made a mouse slip, due to the nature of the closed position in the center and both sides trying to castle, as you can tell from the valuation bar, this is only a little bit better for black. Now, this is the unfairness of having to play against someone as great as Magnus, is that, as you see, even when he makes a horrible mouse slip in the opening, his position is still okay. And this is why it's very tough to play against Magnus, because his position somehow are magically fine, the gods always favor him, and that's how it goes. So after king to f1, I decide to play the move d5. Magnus takes, I take back, and when I play d5 here, I'm trying to argue that because white hasn't castled, I should be able to open the board in the style of the former Soviet masters. Now, those of you guys who have studied Soviet chess, they were dominant in the game of chess in the 1950s till about the 1990s or 2000s. One of the sayings goes that if your opponent has a king stuck in the middle of the board, you want to open up the center, try to attack very quickly before your opponent can complete their development. So we get takes. Now we get the move queen to e2, I castle, and Magnus goes knight c3. Now in this position, I spent nearly 40 seconds before trading the knights on c3, and the reason for this is that it's a little bit discombobulating. When I'm playing this position during the game, I was thinking to myself, Magnus is obviously mouse slip. I know I'm better, the king's in the middle of the board, this rook is never getting into the game. But the problem is, there's no immediate way to punish this blunder, and on top of that, we're playing a game of blitz chess with 5 minutes for the entire game. So because of that, I have to kind of get my bearing, the senses, and just play moves, even though it feels like there should be a way to win the game. So I decide to trade the knights on c3. Now I play this move h6 to stop white from playing either bishop to g5 or knight to g5 in this position. Say I were to play rook to e8, it's all of a sudden spaghetti-o time after knight g5 here, hitting the pawns on f7 and h7. If I play a move like rook e7, queen h5, boom goes the dynamite, white wins the game immediately. So that's why I play h6, stopping any of these ideas by putting a bishop or a knight on g5 here, and now we got the move h3. I play the move rook to e8, sensible move, trying to guard the pawn in the center, and now Magnus plays bishop e3. Now in this position, I play the move bishop d6, and as you can tell, I play this move relatively quickly. Again, at this point, I'm trying to play on the themes here, because in my mind, I'm thinking that if I trade the bishops here, this can only help white's position, because after queen takes e3, it's one less piece to attack with, white is one square closer to getting the king to safety, and it just doesn't make sense from a thematic standpoint. However, the computer, of course, laughs at this and says you should trade, play bishop to e6, trading all the pieces down, violating the cardinal rules that I learned as a young kid when I first started playing the great game of chess. Now, this also illustrates why chess is such a rich game, because these ideas, they go against what I've learned over the years, but every position is different. There's always some unique flavor to everything that's going on, and this is a case where I should actually trade off more pieces, even though I feel like fundamentally it's wrong. So instead, after bishop to e3, I play the move bishop to d6 here, and now Magnus plays knight to d2, trying to bring this knight to e4. I go bishop to e6. This is a move that I actually thought was wrong in retrospect. I thought I should have played knight to a5, trying to harass this bishop on this nice diagonal. Instead, I go bishop e6, we get the trade, and now Magnus goes g4. Now, at this point, I was already profoundly unhappy with what I'd done in the game, because now white is going to put this knight on e4 and get this huge bastion. Say white were to go knight e4 right away, I can go f5, kicking the knight out of town. But once we get g4 here with no f5 and this golden square for the pony to jump every which way, it actually was starting to feel like the game is turning around in typical Magnus fashion. So I played queen d7, get knight e4, and I play the move rook to f8. One of the good things is that because there's no increment, sometimes you're forced to move very quickly in these situations. And I just decided, you know what? It doesn't matter that I'm playing Magnus Carlsen. I'm just going to move fast and try to play logical moves. So I go rook f8. Now here, Magnus really surprised me with the move g5. I actually was expecting to play something like h4 or queen to f3 here. After queen to f3, my goal was to play knight e7 and f5, trying to open up this file for the tower. Say white goes king g2, f5 takes. Suddenly you'll notice the power of these rooks coming to the king side here. The king and the queen are very, very weak. So Magnus plays the move g5. I decided to trade the pawns. I swing the tower over to h6 because, as we know, bruh, you gotta lift your rooks. I'm not sure that's the exact phrase, but we'll go with it anyway. I think it's bruh, do you even lift? But I play rook to h6 here, stopping white for playing queen to h5 to checkmate on the king side. For example, say I go rook to e8. There, after queen h5 here, the white's threatening this famous checkmate on h7. A former world chess champion actually missed a mate in one when he played a computer many years ago, so we don't want to be like that former world champion. As such, I play the move rook to h6. After rook to h6, Magnus plays h4, and now I play the move knight to e7, trying to bring the knight to where it can jump to f5, d5, or g6. Now we got to move knight to e4. Here I play rook to h7, and now Magnus plays the move h5. After h5, I play the move knight to f5. This is also slightly inaccurate. Probably I should have played f5, but as a human, it's very scary to see something like knight g5, and you're worried about all kinds of fossils with the knight jumping every which way, like f3 or something like d4. You're very worried about the problems on this diagonal, and computers will oftentimes show that you should never be afraid of the fossils because computers have never seen a fossil. But nonetheless, I actually became worried about this idea, so I thought put the knight on f5. Pressure the bishop. If I can trade the bishop, then I can play f5, and I'm doing well. So we get the move bishop to d2. Now I play the move bishop e7, Magnus plays rook to e1, and here I play the move knight d6. Now, as you can tell, this is the classic Magnus Carlsen effect. I have completely messed up the position. It is now equal, and Magnus has everything to play for. After knight to d6, Magnus here plays the move knight g3, and this is surprisingly a slight inaccuracy here. Computer wants white to simply trade on d6 here, play something like queen to e4, and with the pawn and the rook here, the queen swing, maybe even running the king to the queen side here, white is apparently fine. Instead, Magnus goes for knight g3. Now here I played the move queen to a4, and this was an all-star move for me. I don't necessarily need to inflate my ego, but I'm going to be honest, I felt like I was starting to find my rhythm in this tournament. I spent 20 seconds here, and queen to a4 is just an all-star move for me, because what I do is I remember my young days as a kid studying math. I create the classic 90-degree right triangle while hitting these two pawns. Now, this definitely throws everything out of whack here. You can tell the computer says white is better, but the reason this move is so jarring for Magnus is that when you look at the position, objectively, it feels like white has this nice pawn box. This is also a 90-degree triangle, by the way, for anybody who studied math. And these pawns are very secure. So when I go queen to a4 here, computer wants white to take this pawn on e5, and after bishop to f6, queen d5. But as a human, you see queen takes c2, and you're like, uh-oh, spaghetti-o. Both these pawns are weak. The bishop is weak. We have more 90-degree right triangles every which way. With these three weaknesses, it shouldn't be good for white. But the computer says after rook to e2 here, threatening to create more fossils, white is going to swing the king to g2, say I go queen a4 and king g2. White is simply better here. White has managed to manually castle the king. White has a great sunray in the center with the queen. You have the rook on the h file, the rook controlling the other open file. White is just doing very well. But again, it is a blitz game. You have to judge your time. You have to base things on intuition and pawn structures. And Magnus, much like me, assumes that he can't let the base of the chain fall, because if the base of the chain falls, then these two pawns and the bishop are all going to be weak. Whereas currently, let's say I put the queen on c6. Everything here is very secure. The pawns are secure. The pawn is guarded. There's nothing hanging. So that's why Magnus ultimately decides to play h6 here. Ironically enough, when I was doing my live stream on my Kick channel, I actually was worried about this h6 move, and then Magnus, after a 30-second think, plays it. The good news, however, if we look at the bigger picture beyond just today's Title Tuesday, is that Magnus could sense the position. There's something there. He spent 30 seconds, but ultimately he does not find the right move. One of the hallmarks of Magnus Carlsen is usually when there's a position and there's something there, he spends his time even in blitz and he finds the right move, but Magnus's instincts fail him in this instance. So I decided to play this move f6 here. I was very proud of this move, by the way. I also spent 20 seconds. The reason I was so proud of this move is that I guard the pawn on e5 here. And now I potentially can push my g-pawn. Say I go g6 after queen takes e5. The move that I was considering was rook to e8, and this actually loses to a beautiful combination. There's knight to e4 here, and after I take the pawn, there's knight to f6, forking the towers and the king here. And when I take the knight, white can sack the queen. With queen takes rook, takes, and it's checkmate of the king. King has no squares available. That's GG, why not? So that's why I was very proud of this f6 move, because what I do is I guard the pawns here. I still am spying these two pawns. And now if white takes, I'm just going to trade the rooks. For example, takes, king g7. And at this point, after say knight g3, I can play rook to h8. And it's the classic situation of call the ambulance, but not for me, because my king looks open, but white's king is actually the one that's getting attacked on this open h file. Therefore, Magnus plays d4, and now I play the move queen takes c2. d4 is a mistake here from Magnus. I take, we get takes, I trade, and now I play the move rook to f7. Very important that I don't see pawn, free pawn. Why not capture? Because after king takes g7, there's bishop to h6, checking the king here and creating a fossil because it discovers the queen, which is buried under the ground. After I take, white takes the queen, GG. Therefore, I play rook to f7. Magnus plays knight g3. I take the pawn, and now my king is very safe here. The bishop, the pawns, they're all kind of weak at this point, and I'm feeling like I have good chances to win the game. Also, as this is a no increment game, when the dust settles, it's very important, or almost imperative, I would say, that you have an advantage on the clock. And when you look at this position, I am actually up 40 seconds, which is going to play a very big role. So we got pawn takes pawn. I take, we get bishop h6, I trade, and now I play rook g6. Magnus takes, I go bishop to f6. Actually, I saw the bar spike. Apparently, rook to h7, takes, rook h5, and bishop takes c3 is much stronger because the white rook is pinned. Whereas in the game here, after I take, white can freely move the bishop here and keep the rooks on the board. Just to show you guys exactly why that's different. After takes, bishop f4, takes, for example, I can bring the king closer, and we're in endgame with knights and bishops. But as you can tell from the pawn count, I have uno, dos, tres, uno, dos chances to win the game. So I go rook g6, Magnus plays bishop f4, and here I play b6, trying to stop Magnus from swinging the rook over to hit the bishop and the pawn. Now we get to move rook d5. I play bishop b4, king e2, and here I play king f7. Magnus goes king to f3. I play king to e6. He goes rook e5, and now he plays move rook h5. Here I go rook f6, rook h7, king c6, king g4, and now I play this move rook g6. Now in this position, Magnus was starting to get low on time. He has a minute 14 left. He should have played the move bishop g5 with the intention of pushing his p with f4 and f5 here. Had he done this, I still think I would have had great chance to win the game, but it would not have been clear cut. Instead, Magnus goes back, and now I correctly play the move bishop to c5, pinning this pawn, not pinning I should say, but targeting this pawn that's glued and can't start moving forward. There's no pushing p here with this king in the way. So Magnus plays knight e4. I trade, he takes, and now I play the move bishop d6. Now Magnus cannot play rook takes pawn here, because after king to d5, I guard the pony, and then I block with the knight. And here you can tell that I have two minor pieces on the board. Magnus only has one. He's down by 3 points. He will lose the game. So Magnus takes, and here I play the move bishop d6. This is a very, very good practical decision from me here, because when I play bishop d6, I have three juicers that I can start pushing. I'm pushing this p on the queen side here. If Magnus trades and I take with the rook, for example, at this point, it's simply a pawn race. I'm going to push my p, he's going to push his p, but I'll be able to play moves very quickly, and I'm also up 20 seconds on the clock, so I can start to put pressure on Magnus's timer. Magnus goes bishop e3. I play check. He plays f4. If he were to move the king to f5, I can swing the rook over, eating the pawn on a2, and now I just have a free roll. I push the p up the b and the a files just to show you guys. I just start pushing my p very, very quickly, and black is completely winning. Magnus goes f4. I play rook g2. He plays f5. I take, goes f6, and now I play the move rook to a1. This is also a very good move for me. I'm putting the rook behind this pawn to target it from behind, and now with my king so close to this pawn, which is trying to get up the board here, I simply am going to win. Magnus goes rook h5. I swing the king back. Now I'm just bringing the king over to eat this pawn. With three connected on the queen side and plenty of time to start pushing the p, this is all but over. Magnus plays f7. I go king to e6. We got rook h7, and I play rook to f1 here. Now white has no way to prevent the loss of this pawn. in this position, and it doesn't really matter what white does. At any rate, once I take, I have 3 pawns here. Barring something insane happening, I'm going to win. So Magnus here just decides to throw in the towel because he doesn't feel he has any chances to survive. So I get this big win against Magnus. This now means that I am 7 out of 7. I have a perfect score in the tournament. And in round 8, of course, we're playing the future first American World Chess Champion. I know that's a mouthful, and that, of course, would be Hans Niemann. So I have the white pieces in round 8, and I open with the move d4. Hans plays knight f6, and now I play the move bishop g5. Now, everybody who's lived in America, you're probably very aware of the future first American king who likes this opening. This, of course, is the classic Trump house key. So I play bishop to g5. Hans plays d5, and now I decide to play the move knight c3, transposing into a Veresov system. Normally, the way this occurs is white plays knight c3 on move 2, black plays d5, and then white goes bishop to g5. Instead, we reach this via a different order. I will point out I did a recap before where I spoke about a game that I beat Hans in Title Tuesday where I took on f6, but this time around I played knight to c3, and now Hans plays bishop f5. Here I play e3, we get e6, and I play the move bishop d3. Now we get bishop to g6, I play knight to f3, and here we get the move bishop b4. Now I decide to castle my king. Hans plays knight bd7, and here I play the move knight to e2. Now, if anybody's watched my recent speedrun videos, you probably have seen a video where I talk about not putting a knight in front of a pawn. Actually, I don't know if the video has been released for my speedrun, but there's a video where I played a London system just to show you guys a sample, where I say that generally when you play against d4 systems, if you have this structure, you don't want to bring a knight out without pushing a pawn to c5. So now when we look at my position here, you're probably thinking, well, wait, you've brought your knight out. It's the structure, but you haven't put a pawn on c4. You put a knight in front of it. This, of course, is a classic case of do as I say. What's it? Do as I say and not what I do. I forget the exact saying. But basically, I tell you what to do, but don't actually follow my examples because I'm good enough that I can break all the rules. So I play the move knight to e2. Now we get castles, and here I play the move c4. Getting rid of this pawn from c2 and trying to challenge the black center. Hans plays the move pawn takes pawn. I take, and now we get the move pawn to h6. Here I play bishop to h4, keeping the pin of the knight alive here, and Hans plays bishop e7. Now I go knight c3 back, and Hans plays c5. Now in this position, I decide to trade the pawn here, and Hans decides to take with the bishop. Now, one thing about Hans Niemann is that he is very overly aggressive. He likes to always attack. He's never happy with a boring game, and it really hurts him in this instance because in this position, if Hans had played knight takes c5, after saying knight e5, bishop h7, trade, and rook to d1, with only one open file and these rooks opposing each other, very likely this game will be a draw. But as we know, if you want to be a future first world champion, you have to always be aggressive and think you're better than everybody else. So we get bishop takes pawn. Now I play bishop to d3 here, trying to trade off this great bishop. Hans trades, he goes bishop e7, and now I play the move rook fd1. We get queen to b6, and here I play the move queen b5, trying to force the queens off the board. Now in this position, the future first American world champion decides to play his move rook fc8, and as you can tell from the valuation bar, this is an epic fail. Now, I'm not really sure what Hans thought he had here necessarily. Maybe he just wasn't sharp tactically. But in this position, probably the move rook f to d8 would have been best. And after rook to c1, let's say rook c8, for example, takes, and something like king to f1. With same material on the board, specifically the same pawn structure, all the pawns on the same file here, there's really not a lot left to play for, and the game should end peacefully. Instead, Hans plays rook fc8, and this allows me to sack the rook with rook takes knight. We get the trade. Hans takes the rook. I take the bishop. And at this point, I now have a bishop and a knight in return for a rook. Now, one thing I would point out is, generally speaking, if there are a lot of open files or access for a rook can sometimes be better than a bishop and knight. But generally, the bishop and knight combo for a rook is favorable for the two pieces because two pieces coordinate better than one. So now we get to move rook c2. I play bishop to a3 here, guarding the pawn on b2. And Hans plays rook c8. Now I play knight to c3 here, trying to cut off the two towers that are stacked on this row, and I want to try and potentially attack the rook on c2. We get knight b6, knight d4, rook d2, and here I play the move knight e4. Hans goes rook d3, and now I play this move king to f1. Now in this position, what I should have done in this position is I should have played the move king to f1, and there's actually a very specific reason. If black plays knight to c4, hitting the pawn and the bishop here, I saw knight e4, but I missed it after rook d3. I can go king to e2, and look at this rook. It is simply trapped in this position. The bishop and the knight are guarded in case you try to capture. This rook is going bye-bye very soon. But I played the other order with king f1, and now after the move e5 here, the difference is that if I play king to e2, now black can sack the rook with rook takes bishop, take the knight on d4, and now we have a situation where we both have a rook and a knight. Now, the reason this is different, just so you guys see it, is after e5 here, I can play this move knight to f3, hitting the rook and the pawn, and when the rook moves, I simply gobble, and I gain an extra pawn. I'm just slowly going to win the game. But now after e5 here, when I play knight to f3, there's no rook on d2 being attacked, so Hans can play the move f6, connecting the pawns, and it's actually already a little bit tricky for me because these two rooks are on the open files. This bishop is a little bit awkwardly placed with knight c4 threatening to fork here, so I do need to show some position. So I play king e2. Hans plays rook d7, and now I play the move knight to e1. Now, this is simply a bad move for me. Computer, of course, says I should play b3 because it's, see no evil, fear no evil, I believe is the saying. And for me, I'm obviously mortally afraid of the classic kebab on the second rank here. You look at this rook, the activity for the towers, and I'm like, okay, I can't do this. But of course, if I had used more than 5 seconds to play this move, I would have realized that this rook is harmless. There's nothing under attack on the second rank. And let's say black goes king f7, for example, I can always play knight to e1, kicking this tower out of town. You go here, I take, you go here, I take. And once the tower goes back, now I can play like knight c5, I can go king to e2, and it's just a very lovely position. But instead I play knight to e1. Now, this also means my knight now is very passive because I can't ever really move it. Say I were to play like knight d3 here, there's going to be some rook c2 problem with pressure on the king and the knight. So my knight simply becomes a very passive piece. So here we get rook d8. This is a mistake. Hans should have played knight to c4, after which it's not really clear how much better white is. We get rook d8. Here I play g4. Similar to the Magnus game here, I create the nice bastion for this knight. It's outposted beautifully. No f5 to remove it, and you kind of see some symmetry in the games that I played. So we get h5. I play h3 here. I do not take because then there's f5, and my bastion isn't solid anymore. So I go h3. We get the trade, rook c8, and now I play the move b3, cutting off knight to c4, knight to a4 here, trying to dominate the pony and creating space for the bishop to retreat. We got knight d5, rook d1, rook d8, and now I play the move king to f3. Now again, I see a boogeyman. In this position, I should have played the move knight to d3. I was worried that with the double stack, there's going to be some kind of threat with this knight jumping every which way. But as you can tell from the computer bar, there's nothing for black at all. Instead, I go king to f3. Here we get b6. And now I play rook to c1. And we get the move rook to c7. I decide to trade. I go knight d6. And this move is another bad move for me. Probably I should have just played king to e2, bishop b2, and then slowly brought the pieces back into the game. Instead, I go knight d6, knight d5, and now I have to regrettably return the knight back home. What I had missed in this position is I thought I could simply bring my knight into the game, but there's knight to c3 here, and suddenly this pawn on a2 is super weak. So I bring the pony back. Now his pony can't jump to either of these squares in this position, and we get to move king f7. Play knight d3, king e6, knight b4, we get rook c8, and now I trade and play bishop to e7. Now, at this point, I already felt like I was losing the thread of the game a little bit here because black's rook is actually getting active. The rook is coming down to c2 to create the kebab on the second rank. And already here, I thought I might have messed it up where I wouldn't be winning. So I decide to play bishop e7. We get king e6. I come back, rook c2, a4. And here Hans plays rook b2. I go knight d2, we get a5, bishop c3, rook c2, and I move my knight back to e4. Really, really important here that I have this bastion. Black cannot remove this knight right away, because if, for example, you were able to get this position, you'll notice that suddenly the knight and the bishop are under attack, and black would win the game. So Hans plays g6, I go bishop to e1, we get f5, I trade, and now after the move knight to d2, the dust has pretty much settled here, where technically speaking, this should be very close to a win, because the knight is always guarding the pawns. This pawn guards this one, and the knight guards this one. So I can just bring my king around and maybe long-term move the knight. I should be winning. So we get rook c3. I go king e2, king d5. Now I play this move f3. Another very important move here, because currently this bishop on e1 is a very passive piece. It's walled in, no diagonals. But once I go f3, now I have this free diagonal to h4. And now these two pawns on the queen side become very, very weak. We get e4, I trade, and I go bishop to h4. And at this point, Hans Niemann can more or less resign the game because my king guards the pawn, the knight guards the pawn, and now my bishop is going to hit these pawns on the queen side very, very effectively. Hans plays rook c2, I go bishop to f6, rook c6, and now I put the bishop on d4, creating the classic wooden shield with the bishop in the middle of the board. We get rook h6, and now I go knight to c4, freeing the pony. The pawns still do the job of guarding everything. The bishop and the knight just outplay the rook. We get check, king d1, check, king c2, check, king c3. Hans plays rook h1. I take, I come back to c4. I take the juicer on a5, and now I'm simply going to be pushing my p. Hans plays rook c1, I go king b4, rook d1, and after the move knight to c4, Hans Niemann resigns the game because the knight and the bishop play. I have two connected pass pawns just rolling up the board. This pawn can't get through, it's blockaded. If black were to sack the rook, you'll notice the knight stops the pawn thrust. If you ever push, I sack the pony, push the p, get the queen, and checkmate in a few moves. So after knight to c4, Hans resigns the game. This took me to a perfect score of 8 out of 8. Now in round 9, I would get another big win against Vladimir Fedoseev. It was a game where I was actually completely lost, but I was able to come up with a nice little tactical trick and win. In the 10th round, I would win against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave from France, which would put me on a perfect score of 10 out of 10. Unfortunately, in the 11th and final round, I would play my countryman from America, Jeffrey Zhang, with the black pieces. Jeffrey was pretty content with a solid result because a draw would ensure that he got second place. Jeffrey didn't take any risks. I tried, I got a worse position. Ultimately, the game would end peacefully in a draw, meaning that I do win Title Tuesday with a score of 10.5 out of 11. But unfortunately, I fail in my quest for perfection. So it's a touch disappointing since I was there in the final round. Nonetheless, I get a big win in Title Tuesday with a great score. Can't complain about that. I play some great games, so I'm pretty happy overall. And that's going to do it for this recap from today's Title Tuesday, today, November 18th of the great year 2025. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your day. And if I don't see you soon, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back very soon with some more great content. See you guys. Have a good one. Bye.